Hey, Jason, I figured today we could talk a little bit about Google's AI Studio. Have you played with this before?
No, I have not.
Not so much. I got to be honest. So what happened was Google released a new model, and I'm sure you know this routine. New model comes out, you want to kick the tires, play around with it, and I got thinking, it's been a minute since I played around with the Google models. Maybe I should go look and see what they've done. And turns out a lot was going on, at least in Google AI Studio. So I played with this a little bit before. It was more of I don't want to say it was just a chatbot, but it primarily had a chat interface. And at the time, I think we were probably playing around with things like maybe Bolt or Lovable or possibly Replit that were pretty advanced, honestly. And
Mhm.
now it feels like some of these cloud providers or foundation model providers are coming out with their own software to do basically all of the things. So give us a UI that's more than just chat that allows you to use the model in the back end. So for this one, we'll talk a little bit about video, a tiny bit about pictures, text to speech and speech to text, but also maybe just multiple things that you can do with this out of the gate. It's got pros and cons. I still feel like I'm more of a Lovable fan than an AI Studio fan, but if you're in the Google AI ecosystem already and you'd like to try out things like Nano Banana or VO3 or Gemini 3 Pro, I think this is actually a good place to do so, and it might surprise you. There's quite a few cool features in here that I think are quite handy.
Okay, awesome. Well, let's take a look.
Sounds good. All right, so this is the main screen here. There's a lot going on. You can see that I've got some apps on the left-hand side that we'll talk about. So the first one is when you're looking at this interface itself, I just want to point out a couple things. So Gemini 3 Pro Preview is the default. Now, the apps that you make with this may actually use Gemini, I think it's called Flash. My apologies. I think I made this mistake earlier when we were talking. But basically, when you make the apps themselves, they can inherit an API key, which is kind of nice. But it will use Flash by default. If you want to use Gemini Pro, you'd add that key, and I'll show that in a moment what it looks like. The other is you can add system instructions in here. So let's say you've got a certain type of coding pattern that you'd like it to follow, or maybe let's say you wanted to make it functional, for example, as opposed to object oriented. You could do that here in the system instruction. Or if you want to have like really detailed comments, this would be the place to add it. So when you're trying to give a little bit more hints or a little bit more instructions or details to what you want the model to do. Now, under here, there are only two languages you can pick from. Both are TypeScript, but Angular or React. I was playing with React the entire time, but I'm sure Angular would be perfectly fine. I don't know what versions they were using, but we'll look at the code here in a second. And then lastly, when we're talking about multimodal, and sorry, I know this is a setting, so it shouldn't be that exciting, but in here, there is something about which microphone you're going to be using. And I won't be able to demo this on this call because I think there's something up with my audio works when I'm in a recording, but I was able to show that you can at least talk to it and we'll do text to speech for you. And I do have an example in here that will spit out some text that also has, it's not pre-recorded, but basically already an MP3 file for it. So without further ado, I'll go into a little bit more of this screen here. So there's the microphone thing that we were talking about, and then there is add files, so we can start uploading things. But what I actually thought was pretty cool in here is this I'm feeling lucky button. And you can just click this and it will start creating app ideas for you, which I thought were pretty neat. So I created one of them further on, but also on the bottom here, it says supercharge your apps with AI, and you can start adding these in. So if you want to add VO3 capabilities to it, or if you want to add conversation into your app, or if you want to add all of these, you could add them in. One thing I did want to be careful about, though, is when I first started using this, I thought this was just a standard chat box. So I could do things like upload a picture and say, edit my picture, because that's how Google AI Studio worked before. It seems like it's primarily geared towards app creation these days. So if I upload a photo and say, edit this photo, it will create a photo editing app, which is cool, but not the same as what I wanted before. So the experience just changed a little bit, but probably for the better if that's what you're looking for. All right, so one last thing here on this page. So other than that, if you want to start from somebody else's idea or maybe from a template that's already out there, there are things in here where you can start with like landing pages if you wanted to, or things like generating images or video. These are pretty common, or 3D worlds. I did create a game as well that we'll talk about here in a minute, but basically you can start from these templates. So it makes it a little bit easier for you if you've got like that blank page syndrome where you're not sure where to start and I'm feeling lucky isn't really hitting what you want. If you're more visual, this might be a good way to go. Okay, so we'll get into the apps that I made. So the first one, the reason I started talking about this, Jason, there's this conference coming up next year called Datadog Dash that is always on my radar. And somebody sent out an email recently just saying, hey, the CFP is opening soon. We might be able to start taking client submissions. And then there were some stats and things like that in there. And I thought, oh, this is brilliant. I'll use Gemini 3 Pro to make an infographic. So of course, I booted up this tool. I put in my prompts. I pasted in some of the email, that kind of stuff to get some of the salient numbers. And of course, what it did was make an app, which is fine. But what we're going to do is test this app here in a moment. Actually, I've already tested, but we'll show what it did. So I took a newsletter from Every. Have you played around with Every before or seen Every? Every's kind of like a resource for like research. Pardon me, I'm mumbling here. But basically, I took this Every article that was about, essentially, imagine like in the AI age where it would be similar to a GPS, where the GPS helps you navigate around, and therefore you're not remembering your maps as much as you were before. So the premise of this article is that by using AI to solve problems where we would normally have a cognitive load, maybe what's happening is we're not stretching or using that muscle as much, and it could be atrophying. I'm not saying I agree with it or not, but it's a fairly long article. And I thought, well, there's some stats in here. Maybe we could do something as well as ads. Maybe we could take this and make it like a visual explainer to sort of rope people in to have them actually read the article. Okay, so if we go back, my apologies, right here, what I'm going to do is go full screen on this. So this is sort of, I think Gen AI is pretty good at summarization, but I know myself. I'm more of a visual person, so I find if you can make it visually appealing or break it up with images, I'll generally watch or read that summary or watch that Cole's notes for sure. So in here, I told it to, it changed things a little bit around, but I told it to put the quote closer to the top just so it's better. But basically in here, so what we'll do, we'll take like a summary at the top, which I think most of these are pretty good, and then do like an urgency score, and then some action required if there's any things in here. But it's just a template, basically. Now, this took me about 3 minutes, I think, to generate. It was pretty fast. One of the things that I didn't fix because I thought it would be an easy fix to do later is it will create that infographic illustration. So a thing that you would normally associate with an infographic, but it does it after the creation. What I'd probably do is say, hey, when this loads the page, create it at the same time. And I've noticed that for most of these that use Gen AI, it will be hidden behind a button, so it won't generate necessarily right away. You might have to click something else to do it. Not the end of the world, and generally if you go back to the chatbot, it'll fix that for you. Now you can see this doesn't seem too bad. And if we open up a new tab and pop over here, this isn't too bad. So one thing that I noticed is that sometimes the letters are a little bit weird. I'm just looking through. I don't see anything too bad in here. No, actually, I think this is pretty good. I'm not seeing any typos yet, but let me know if you see anything.
No, I mean, that seems that's one of the big breakthroughs, it seems like lately, is how much better it is with the text.
Yeah, I had to read it all to find one, but I think this is the only one I found here. Synthesize, yeah. So again, I wouldn't say take this infographic and run with it, but as a way to get you started with a pretty good graphic, I think you could probably take this and replace the text at least to get you kind of to that idea that explains it. Again, I'm talking with my hands here, I guess, because this is visual, but I feel like this is an easy way to get started with an infographic. Maybe not just like most Gen AI, maybe not the be all end all or the final shape of what you want, but a really easy way to get started. Okay, so next one in here is Nano Banana. So of course I uploaded a photo of myself and I said, hey, can you edit this? And the model, of course, responded back, here is a fantastic app. go forth and have fun. So I'm going to quickly upload an image here. I've got one set up. This should work. And I already did this prompt, so it should work pretty well. I'm just going to go quickly full screen. Now, this does use Flash's image creator. So it's Flash 2.5 as opposed to Gemini Pro. So it's a little bit different. Now, I had taken this image and I said expand. I'm not sure if it did expand it. It seems to be cropped, actually. Did I miss anything? I think it's cropped in a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know.
It is a slightly different image. Yeah.
Did it add a little bit at the bottom, or did it take away? I think it took some away.
It's hard to say. The image is also slightly different. So one thing that Banana can do is keep that context that I had before and make images that, for the most part, look the same. Those, honestly, little slight things are a little bit different. So I think I'd see some people in the field here that are a little bit different in the original. And we're talking about like little dust points that have moved just a tiny bit in the image. But it's similar, but not the same. And again, all this is it's like an app that could use Nano Banana. And all I did was add that Nano Banana in as functionality as I did it. Okay, again, these aren't about the apps. It's more about what you can create and how quickly you can create it.
Mm-hmm.
But I did want to show off a little bit. Are you good at typing? I'm pretty bad at typing.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'm pretty good. It depends on the keyboard, like you get the right keyboard and you're dialed
Yeah,
in.
well, I'm looking to the right of me because I got a few different keyboards, but absolutely. So I told it to create something similar to Typing of the Dead. Typing of the Dead is an arcade game where you type and there's zombies coming towards you and you got to type.
Mm-hmm.
So I told this one to be more about AI. You can't hear the sounds, but as I type, it will do that. And yeah, it works pretty fast. It's a good way to do touch typing. I don't know.
I mean, I built a typing game where you just type as many, sentences as you can in under 60 seconds, and this blows that game away.
Okay, well, I mean, that's pretty good too. Yeah. And you can see as things pass the firewall perimeter, which is pretty funny. the integrity of whatever system this is goes down, which I thought was kind of funny too. Okay, anyway, just a throwaway game.
All right, good one shot.
The other thing about Google is, so we talked about video, we talked a little bit about images, but Google's got a lot of resources and APIs that we can use, one of which is Google Maps. Now, this one turned out pretty well. I will say for some of these apps, you may need to worry about access to your mic, access to your location, some like permissions basically for your browser. So as you're creating them, you may need to approve a few things. The other is it doesn't save by default, but a quick hack is if you just change the name, you'll notice that there's this little icon here. It will save to you. And it saves to Google Drive for you, which is interesting. Or you can download it, or you can save it to GitHub, or you can deploy it. Now, if you've got a project space in Google Apps already, this will deploy. In my case, I don't, so it's not going to deploy. Or if you want to, you could just share the app out, which is nice. And then finally, we talked a little bit about those API keys. So by default, the apps that you create don't need API keys, which is incredible. But they use Flash 2.5. So they're not going to use Gemini 3 Pro unless you bring the key. And then when you bring the key, it's going to be using your API calls as well. So it's good and bad. It's a good way to get started really quickly, but also it means that if you want to transform this into something that you could use in production, you could. So neither here nor there, but it at least gets you there. Now, for here, we've got this preview. We got the stuff on the left-hand side that we saw. We can also see the code. There is no terminal that I have found, but you can certainly get into the code, no problem. And then for the app itself, you can simulate devices, so mobile, tablet, and then once you've done so, you can make it horizontal if you want to, which is pretty cool. So similar to apps like Lovable that we've seen, and we can reload the app. I'm just going to quickly go full screen so we can see it. So this is the app. Now, it is using location aware. I don't know how good you are at Vancouver geometry, but I assume you figure out pretty quickly that I don't live on the water. Yeah, exactly. I do live in this area, but I definitely don't live on the water. Where should I go to eat sushi?
Down.
Let's just see if this pulls us up. Yeah. I mean, yes. Find the fish under where you are. Okay, so I think there's an issue with the API key, but basically we'll do like a Google Maps search and pull you back stuff up in Maps. And my understanding is you can actually click on the links as well and go to Maps from there. Okay, so again, I'm just doing a tour de force of like the APIs that you can add in. I feel like this is very similar to some of those app builders that we've seen before, but I do feel like what differentiates Google from others is that one, they've got Gemini 3 Pro, which is cool, big context. But two, it's those API keys and that authentication. They've got all that sort of built in. Not saying that it's better than the others, but at least gives you a leg up in those departments. Okay, almost done here. So we talked about code. We talked about the preview. We talked about the storytelling one. Okay, so what I did was, again, thinking I was very smart, I took a Datadog screenshot, uploaded it, and said, describe this screenshot. I thought this would be a good exercise. You can tell I was doing all of these while I was waiting for the first one because I still didn't know it was going to make apps. And it did a pretty good job. I'll reload this here in a moment so you can see what's going on. So it animated the screenshot and it changed the Datadog logo. Not the end of the world. It's totally fine. But I did find this rather interesting. You can scroll down and sort of see some of the stuff that was going on here. I was just looking at Azure Functions and the logging. I just happened to have a screenshot for that. But I did find it interesting that I created like a Datadog clone that's animated. But what I wanted to do was get that incident story. So this is one of the ones where I told it when it generates the page, generate the text as well, but also generate the audio. And I said, make a narrative from the story, because as you and I well know, this is something that we deal with often. A client will come to you with like a story about some things that have happened, and maybe they can't piece it together as like a timeline, maybe. Like, let me know what happened, or let me know like the beats that are important. And that's pretty cool. So this gave me like a pretty good overview. And then I also said like, hey, could you give us like a lesson learned? Like, what can I take away from this talk or this webinar or what have you? What can I take away from the story? And these are actually pretty good takeaways for a fictional story written about Azure functions. Not too bad. And then lastly, I got to generate the story. Now, again, you're not going to be able to hear this because it's in my ears, but not in yours. But I'm just going to quickly hit this. And it's just reading through it. Okay. Now, what I found interesting is like it's a nasal high voice similar to mine. Just probably just look at the draw, but
well, is that maybe based on your geolocation? It thinks you're Canadian underwater.
Exactly, like a typical Vancouverite. It's just bubble sounds. Okay, I think I've got one more here after this. So this is a VO animator. Again, I uploaded a photo and said animate this. One thing it won't do if you don't have a key for the video, at least, is it will ask you for an API key. So I can click this. Let's pick this, a terrible photo of myself. And then, so like this, again, just a sample app, but if you want to create something that would animate, you could do that. It will ask for a key here when I click it, but I'll show you an app that I created with it. And 1 second. So that's the every article. So I created something similar. I said just make one that will play. Again, this doesn't have audio, but I figured I would go out with a bang here. So let's see if this plays. It does. Okay, so I told it to make a video about feudal Japan. I think it made a video animated than anything else, but I thought it did a pretty good job. On the screenshot, though, if I know it's hard to zoom, but these faces are pretty messy. Like if you pause the video, it's pretty messy. If you video, it's not too bad. But yeah, these faces are pretty disfigured in the background. So it's like they're using, I don't know, Google Maps background photos or something to train on because the faces are all blurred. But otherwise, I thought this was pretty good. So if you want to create apps that have some of that Google functionality in them automatically, I feel like this is a good way to go. If you're stuck coming up with an app idea to do things like, I don't know, make a webinar, this seems like a pretty good way to do it. Just to come up with like this API plus that API might be cool to watch. But yeah, that's it. Just a really quick tour of what you can do with AI Studio. I thought it was pretty awesome. Again, Gemini 3 Pro is fantastic for me so far. That being said, if I'm only going to use it here, it's less useful than in something like a Cursor or like a Gemini CLI or what have you. I think that's what I would reach for. But when you want to create a quick app easily using Google APIs, I feel like this is second to none.
Yeah, it's definitely got some neat new novel type of things that are going to be really helpful for the new folks entering this arena. It's a very accessible type of mindset for a lot of it, which is no surprise coming from Google. And I think it, yeah, just sort of like moves the needle a little bit farther. And almost like you start thinking about how there's services out there. Wix comes to mind where they can help you just create like a website from scratch, from nothing. And this will kind of do something similar, you know, and maybe it's even more functional than that. So it starts to really shift, you know, what's possible for small businesses and lots of people who are just trying to, you know, create something online of their own. So cool. Well, appreciate all that, Ryan. And yeah, can't wait to see more.
Awesome.
We'll talk to you sometime in the future.
Sounds good. Thanks, Jason.
See you.